Good afternoon, East Hampton and community. Welcome to LTV. As always, it's a pleasure to be here. Well, the fall season is in the air. Change is in the air. It's a very good time to go out and pick some apples and pick some pumpkins, watch the leaves turn color. And if you could all, for just a moment, imagine all the people living life in peace, and the world will be as one. That, of course, are some of the famous lyrics from the legendary John Lennon song, Imagine. Which leads me to our very special guest today, Arlene Reckson. Arlene was a huge success in the music industry, as in all of her endeavors, which we will learn more about throughout the show today. Arlene is recognized for coining the term punk rock. She was the first woman appointed as director, national director of A&R Pie Records. She brought the UK hit Kung Fu Fighting here to the United States. She was the personal assistant to Yoko Ono and part of the John Lennon entourage. So let us meet this truly dynamic, brilliant, and talented woman. Arlene. Arlene.
Thank you. Thank you very much. It's quite an intro. And
yes.
Thank you for my 15 minutes of fame adjacent.
Well, it's all true.
Thank
I'd
you.
like to begin by asking you, first of all, how did you get started in the music industry?
I was a shoe designer. I had success as a shoe designer, and it was very isolated, in terms of, you worked in a factory in those days.
Okay.
And it just seemed like more fun to do something in the music business, and that's pretty much it. So I went and, to those days there were agencies that you can go to, and they
yes.
sent me in a job interview and started out at Record Plant Studios
yes.
as the nighttime receptionist, which basically I think I was like 6 to 12.
You certainly worked your way up.
Yeah, I did. Well, that's the really only way you should do any industry, is that if you're going to learn everything.
You're right. Start from the ground because
start
you
at the
know
bottom.
better. That's right.
And then
work your way up.
Then I worked my way up to studio manager and then onto record labels.
Yes, I know you're very proud of coining the term punk rock. Could you tell us where you were working at the time and who you were with and how it came to be that you stated punk rock and then it stuck?
I was working at Record Plant. At that point, I was the manager. My office was outside Studio C on the 10th floor. And David Johansen of New York Dolls was recording in there. And I don't know, they may have even been just recording a demo. I'm not even sure at the time. And Ben Fong Torres, one of the writers, eventually editor of Rolling Stone, came. He asked me my opinion, being that you're sitting there and you have seen, hundreds of groups come and go. And in my mind, it was a different kind of punk. It was sort of like that 1950s on the street corner kind of punk. Is David, who has actually a great record that just came out recently.
What is his name?
I can't remember.
Oh,
but
okay.
It's political. I'll think of it later. Something about sinking the ship or something, but it's a cool video. But so anyway, he said to me, "What do you think of this band?" And I said, "Oh, like punk rock," because here was David, no record deal, but he came in with the swagger of a Mick Jagger.
Okay.
So I was more like, like punk on the street thing. And Ben says to me, "Can I use it?" So I say, "Sure." And who would have thunk it?
Very nice.
But it took about a couple of years till he, used it on David. Then I went to England, came back with new clothes and a new haircut, and then it became a whole other movement.
Okay, great. Let's talk about Kung Fu Fighting and how you recognized well, it was a hit in the UK,
Right.
and you have
And
mentioned
it wasn't
to
a
me,
hit yet in the UK.
It wasn't a hit. So
No,
you
no.
found it out or determined it.
Well, what happened was I had just been hired by Pi Records, ATV Pi Records here, the American operating arm. And I had left Polydor and went with ATV. And I was listening to records that the president of the company was playing for me over the telephone.
Okay, wow.
And that was the one that stood out. And I said, yes, buy that one. And there were only, and I remember saying, I'm sure, I don't know if it'll be a hit, major hit, but I think it'll go top 10, you know. And I said, you know, yes, let's get that. So he brought the record, he bought the rights to it.
Yes.
But there were only two of us in the company. We didn't have a promotion department, we didn't have advertising, it was just president and myself. So we then leased it to 20th Century.
Okay.
And they had a deal that if it sold 1 million, they'd have to commit to an album. It wound up selling 8 million in the United States, and I think it was 11 million worldwide.
That's phenomenal. And what was it about the song that just made you think that it was going to be a hit?
My talent is no talent, is really what it is. I know that I've accomplished certain things, but I have a very common ear. What I like is what the general public likes, you know. So
Well, that's a lot of insight.
You know,
Yeah.
part of being an A&R director is where you don't spend your money, not where you spend it. A hit, I think, is usually easy to see, or hear, rather. I would think so, although many people have missed them. But I think sometimes a lot of the people who are in the business, who probably know a lot more than I do about music, structure of music, theory of music, get to be too esoteric about it. I'm just common.
You just hear it.
I just
You
hear it,
and you say.
if I like it, believe me, that's what masses like.
That's
So-
great. Very
so that
cool.
was it.
And how did you get appointed to be the national director?
I think it was just sort of, you know, right place, right time.
Okay.
You know, make your own luck, so to speak. There was a time that women were not executives in businesses, and you know, we're still trying to break the glass ceiling.
You must have been an extremely hard worker, aside from
that
being
too,
bright.
yeah.
Yes.
But I'm a workaholic, and you know.
Okay. Well, there you go. That's the answer.
It's one of those diseases you get rewarded for.
Okay.
So.
Well, that's good.
So I was just there, and I think they needed a woman executive, and I was hopefully the best choice in the time.
Very nice. That's fabulous. Okay. Well, let's move on to Yoko Ono and to John Lennon. I'll start by asking you, and you know quite a good deal about them. Why do you think they were a couple?
I have a real theory about that, and it is that there's nothing that was middle class about them.
Okay.
And the opposites attract, so to speak, and yet they were very similar in many ways. So she came from a very aristocratic Japanese family, very educated family. He came from more of a street, sort of more abstract home life.
Yes.
With his mother. We all kind of know the story.
Story.
But together, there was nothing that they had about them that was what we would consider middle-class morality, middle-class obligation.
Well, they were also rebellious.
Yeah,
Yes,
that was
of
it.
course.
So but from very different ends of the pendulum swinging. And I always thought that was the thing they had in common.
Okay. So what was it like to be the personal assistant to Yoko Ono?
It was, well, she had other assistants who actually did real work. I was really more like entourage paid entourage. I did certain things, you know, for them, and I went shopping, but we spent a lot of time. It was during the so-called Lost Weekend, and that was a major part that I was in California.
Well, the Lost Weekend, that was with John Lennon, though.
But I was here with her during that time, too. But I did work for them. But I also did artwork for her.
Okay.
You know, Yoko's artwork is conceptual art, but somebody had to make it reality art. So I did, you know, like Charlotte Mormon art happenings with her.
How influential do you think she was on John Lennon?
Tremendous. I think that she made him feel like he was an artist. And she introduced him to a world of people that he respected and that he fed off of and nourished his creative side. So there was a whole other world that she introduced him to, and I think that she was very influential in his life that way.
Do you think that she was part of the breakup? I don't know if you want to share that or not.
I really don't know. I wasn't really around for that, so I can't speak with any knowledge of that. I would say not.
Okay.
From a woman's point of view, there was nothing in it for her to break them up.
Well, what about that they went on to create their own?
Well, they could have always done things separately to that, but reason to break it up. I think that the guys themselves, I would imagine, that they just kind of were, it's a family, and you get it, at odds with each other's, and you need to experience your own life, and you need to make your own statement. And John and Paul were always as one. So but I can't speak for them. I really don't know.
Okay, and let's talk about John Lennon. What might you like to share with us about John? That from a first-hand relationship.
He was, in many ways, exactly what you thought, and not at all. He was creative and funny, and he could be
clever,
very goofy. Yes,
I mean, if you think about the lyrics to some of the songs that are
very,
legendary.
very quick wit about things. So he was all those things. But I think for many of us, myself included, because I started as a fan. I was the kid in the high school yearbook. Your goal was to meet the Beatles. So
of course.
That I was a fan, and I don't know how jaded I became, if I ever really did become jaded in that sense. But I was brought into the inner sanctum. But there was always an energy around him.
Okay.
That created a buzz that, and even George Martin talked about it when they walked into his studio. There was something about them. And
you gravitated towards him.
Not did you gravitate, there was just this excitement, energy that when he was in the space that was there. And there are other artists who have it too. Stevie Wonder had it. I worked with John Bon Jovi when he was basically, an assistant gopher over at Power Station. And he would want to hear my war stories, and we'd sit and have lunch sometimes, and he would work there to get free time for his band. And he was a great kid, and I remember saying to him, you have it, you have star quality. I said that to a lot of cute young boys, but but he did have it. He has it. There's just people who have that sort of energy about them.
Yeah, and I did read that or heard from you that you were there for the first recording of Imagine.
Well, that's why it's special to me, that I was working in the studio. They were working on Imagine. It was the first project that he came into Record Plant with. And when they sat down to hear it, and they invited several people in as an album, which means they've done the 10 recordings or 12, whatever there are on there. They've mixed each one, perfected it, edited, and now they've assembled them in the order they think it should be as an album. They're going to listen to it as an album. They invited me to come in. And
did you have any input on the order?
No.
Okay.
No. That was not my function at Power State. That was Record Plant, rather.
Okay.
That was my function. I was a manager of, just making sure.
They felt enough to bring you in, though,
right,
to have you.
I think it was because I could roll joints.
Okay.
John, one thing about John
was that a requirement?
Well, it wasn't in the job interview requirement, but he was very anxious and very impatient. He liked things quick, so you had to be quick and do things. And you didn't ask a lot of questions. You asked for something, and you had to figure out how to do it.
Okay.
So anyway, I could roll these really thin, tight joints. So I could roll everybody their own joint instead of one that everybody passed around, because he'd be very impatient waiting for it.
Okay.
So I think so I was in there rolling joints, and just remember there and kind of smoking a joint, listening to Imagine with them for the first time that they're listening to it. And for me, as a kid from the Bronx, that was a special moment.
Sure, of course. And I know you've brought some books with you.
Yeah, I did not write these books, but I appear in these books. So there's the Albert Goldman, that was The Lives of John Lennon. and then May Pang, who was their assistant, and then
Lover.
John's lover for many, many years, way beyond the even Lost Weekend. I appear in her book. There's a picture of me, and I'm referred to in the Phil Spector book, Out of His Head, because he produced some of John's work. And then, I think it was last year or 2 years ago, maybe 2 years ago, Yoko came out and remastered the Imagine series, and they came out with this Imagine book, and I appear in the book, and very flattered to be in it.
That's very nice. Anything specific in there that they state about you that?
Not really. Not as nicely as you put it.
Okay. Well.
Not as nicely as your intro. But it was very nice and very flattering to be part of that history.
Right. And weren't you included in an album sleeve?
Well, the Imagine album sleeve that's behind you.
Yes.
Was everybody who worked on Imagine, their photograph is there. They had been given a Instamatic camera, the Kodak Instamatic camera. It was a nice toy for him, and he got it before it came on the market. So that's with the picture of the album cover, and he went around taking everybody's picture with the Polaroid.
Cool.
So I'm in there
great.
on that album. And then the other photo is the one behind me, which is from the Happy Christmas. That I did have some involvement in there. So, and I'm over there, and it's John and Yoko.
Oh, that's beautiful.
And Phil Spector, who produced it. And there's a joke I could tell, but not.
Not right now. Okay. And in terms of the Beatles, John Lennon, any other things you might like to share in terms of favorite songs, music, influence on you, your life?
I think that it was a generation that we were influenced.
Mm-hmm.
It was a whole generation. I think, being a baby boomer, you were. The Beatles had a tremendous influence on the way you dressed, the way you thought about things. To me, it's sort of the deaths of two Johns really encapsulated an entire era. We lost John Kennedy. The country was hurting. We were looking for something to kind of soothe those wounds, and then came the Beatles.
That's right.
It was a great distraction. And then I think, for us, a lot of the music died in 1980.
Yeah. Well, John Lennon would be having a birthday coming up next week, as it is, October 9th, and he would have been 80 years old.
Really?
Yeah, and I read that the BBC will be doing a broadcast with Sean and Julian, and I believe and Elton John and Paul McCartney will all be part of it. So it should be very interesting, and that's going to be airing next Friday and Saturday.
Oh, okay. I'll be sure to watch.
Yes, we all should. That would be great. So, Arlene, I know that you also have another career.
Right.
A very big one at that. You have been a top producer out here in the Hamptons, in Amagansett, East Hampton specifically, and throughout. Obviously, we're in the midst of this COVID pandemic.
Right.
How has real estate been affected?
Well, I've been now with Corcoran since 2006 when they bought Alan Schneider. So I've been doing real estate out here for 30 years. I think this is an experience. We've always had, some sort of roller coaster ride and bubbles. We've had our champagne bubble of prices going up. This is a very different experience because overnight the Hamptons became a suburb.
Interesting, right,
and
true.
Now the criteria has changed. All of a sudden we have people who are asking about school districts. We never thought it would matter. So we were just happy to have you pay our school taxes and not send your kids here. Correct. So that's changed. Over the summer, people who came out here, and they came out here actually last spring, and they were escaping New York. And then when they're here, there's always a romance that they have with the Hamptons, and they don't want to leave. So for us, there's always a good market in August and September where people want to buy. But now it was very different. Now it really was not just to have a place to call home, to put your signature on it, that's your place. I think people felt that they really wanted the safety of a place they can go to and bowl to, which they felt was going to be a healthier place for their family. So we had a major shift in supply and demand. where now it became...
Is there a bidding war going on?
There are bidding wars going on for rentals. There's bidding wars going on for sales all the time.
Okay. Is inventory greatly depleting, or is there always something new? How would you describe
the
that?
inventory is depleted, but it's not gone, and it's never gone. I wouldn't have a successful career for 30 years if I could sell everything out.
That's right.
You know, it's always in flux. People's lives change. The situation changes. There's always going to be something on the market. You know, you have to sit and wait sometimes.
What would you say the average sale price is that you sell, or that is common ground today for some of these families?
I think I'm not going to say there's an average. I'm going to say that where there's the bulk of inventory, which is, I think there's that $1.5 million to $2.5 million range, which is a big bulk of our market. Anything under $1 million probably sells out in a weekend.
It's unbelievable.
It is unbelievable.
It's unbelievable.
Yeah, that's really where the bidding wars are even more so.
Is under $1 million.
Under $1 million. I mean, I just had one in the $4 million range.
Okay, a bidding war.
A bidding war. So it's going on. But I think that market is the one that is the most sought after because it's the most affordable.
Right.
And especially for like maybe young couples who want to establish a home out here, or senior citizens where this is just their retirement money kind of thing, and they want a place to be.
How would you describe the school district? Are people comfortable sending their children now to school this fall?
I don't really know what's going on. I don't have a child school age, so I really am not aware of what's happening. I don't even know whether they're in classrooms or whether it's virtual. I really don't know.
Okay, and what do you think the effect of having more people living here is going to be on the Hamptons, or on East Hampton, let's say proper, and Amagansett?
I think over the years that I've been here, I've seen that it's been a more year-round community, and the restaurants stay open, and the stores stay open. If you've been out here for years, you remember, you know, it would be the movie theater and maybe one restaurant. So now the movie theater isn't open, so that doesn't draw a nightlife.
Okay.
Because that was where people could go to restaurants afterwards, so I think that's probably affecting it. And also with just COVID and going in somewhere, I mean, like, you know, we're like measuring how far away we are from each other. So I think all of that's a contributing factor to what's going on. But overall, I would think down the road, if they stay and they don't decide to go back, you know, because they're not just moving here.
I mean, we've always had a traffic issue out here, specifically in East Hampton.
Right. And I think, build it and they will come. If they put a two-lane highway, it's still going to be the same traffic.
Okay.
But I think what we may find is that the schools have to increase in the size, that the amount of the student body and the amount of seats in that classroom, I don't know how imbalanced that is. So again, I'm not really involved in the schools. I have a grandchild, eventually I will.
Great.
Right now, I really don't know the
And what
answer
about
to
restaurants and shops? I guess we might see a change there too. Maybe there'll be more clothing stores with more children's merchandise.
I would think so. There are some already, but I think what we may find, which is happening in New York City, where outdoor dining is becoming a fixture. And I'm really happy to see that.
Yes.
Because I spent a lot of time in Paris and Rome, and to me, Hamptons was always a cafe society. It was built for it.
That's right.
And
it's beautiful, actually, to sit outside.
Right, and the fact that
as long as we can.
And the fact that they didn't allow it, and they had these crazy kind of codes to prevent it. That may be the one perk that comes out of all of this, is that we really change a lifestyle. Change, and it becomes that, as I said, the cafe society of Paris and Rome, and where they like to people watch more than we do, I think.
Right. And of course, there'll be much more home parties going on now than at all the clubs and restaurants and the nightlife that was so.
Well, the winter's going to be, new for us. I mean, it was fine in the summer. We kind of getting used to it, and people saying, okay, there's a new way to entertain. You'll come, we'll eat outside, we'll do. Now that we'll be inside, I bought one of those heat lamps for outside.
Great.
So I'll be at my fire pit outside all year.
Okay, well, maybe I'll come join you. That would
Please,
be nice.
I would love you
We'll
to.
make dinner or something. Arlene, it was great to have you here today.
Thank
True
you.
pleasure. You really are a dynamic woman, credible woman.
Thank you.
Have wonderful stories to share, and people are grateful to know you.
Thank you. That's lovely of you. Thank you. Much appreciated.
So I would just like to say thank you again. Thank you to LTV. And coming up next, we have Dr. Cameron Rockshaw, renowned Dr. Cameron Rockshaw, dermatologist, resident of South Hampton, with practices in Manhattan and Garden City, who will speak to us this October regarding breast cancer awareness, and I ask everybody, let there be peace. Thank you.